Hey, what's up everybody? It's Lids, and we're back for some more Gwent, and today we're playing the new Entrenched seasonal event, which is an alternate game in which every unit that we play gains resilience. That means key engines will stay on the board for 2 rounds. Today we're going to be playing one of the most popular decks that we have not ever played before, so I'm excited to go try it out. Let's give it a look. So today we'll be playing a Monster's Blood Scent deck, and yeah, you guessed it, that means today we're using vampires. Vampires are relatively simple. Of course, we'll apply a whole lot of bleeding, and our best way to do that will be with the Unseen Elder, and because we do have Devotion, not only will he apply bleed, he will also make our opponent's bleed trigger twice. Then add Detalff to the equation and we get even more damage on top of that. Meanwhile, cards like the Fleder and the Garkain will get boosted from all that bleed. And the more bleed there is, the more Orianna will get boosted. And the more bleed there is on a single unit, the more Protofleder will get boosted. And then once one of their big units drops low, we'll use Gael to destroy it and get boosted from that. And our big finisher that we'd like to save for either the end of round 2 or the end of round 3 will be Regis, the newest Vampires card, who will get his base power increased based on however many turns our opponent has had a bleeding unit. Other than that, I did throw in Yaga, who starts off by consuming a 4 provision cost card, which can be on our opponent's side of the board, and after the first unit gets consumed, 2 turns later she can consume a 5 provision cost card, and that number keeps on going up, which means that if she has resilience, that's 2 rounds in which to power up her order ability, so by the end of that second round, you're going to be consuming some huge cards on your opponent's side of the board. And I threw in a Foglet on our side, just so that we have a 4 provision cost Death Wish unit in case you need something to get Yaga started. But those are all the big combos, so now I'll flip through the deck to show you what else we have. And Cave Troll you would like to use to protect Unseen Elders, probably your top priority, though Yaga could also work as well. And Queen of the Night can give Purification, which is big in this event because that means getting rid of the resilience on one of your opponent's cards, so you want to try to target one of their biggest units. Then the Witch Apprentice is not a vampire, however, if we have 25 or more points on a row, then it'll get boosted by 2 every turn. It's just really good, and because it can get resilience, that means you get a strong engine that sticks around. Beast of Blood is another source of purification. Again, that means that you'd like to try to target one of your opponent's big cards and take away that resilience. So there's a look at the deck, and like I said, the focus is on applying bleed with the vampires and getting boosted as we do it. And then perhaps sneaking in a Yaga here or there to consume some of our opponent's cards. I'm really excited to try it out, so let's go see it in action. Alright, so going up against vampires here, and we'll go first. Okay, so we have Cave Troll plus Unseen Elder. That is a great combo. We also have Regis. That is, of course, our best finisher. We'd like to save him until pretty much as late as possible. And then Detalff is also amazing. Let's maybe get rid of the Foglet. And I mean, it's not bad by any means, but we might be able to do better. So let's begin with the Cave Troll, so we have a safer way to play Unseen Elder on our next turn. And they may be looking to do the same thing here. This is, of course, pretty much guaranteed to be a mirror match. So now we go with Unseen Elder. And maybe the biggest question here is going to be, will they have Devotion? Because we do, which makes Unseen Elder significantly more powerful. Let's put Crystal Skull on him just to make sure that he, well, has Veil and so actually cannot get bleed. That could be another way we distinguish ourselves from them. No, it's Operator. Oh, I'm not sure you wanted to do that. Because that was the thing I was searching for, getting a Fleder. We did not get one, but if you're going to hand us one, that is quite nice. Now let's get a Garkain down. Now, speaking of engines, let's get a Garkain down here. Okay, they'll play a Fleder directly from their hand this time. So now that we have two vampires right next to each other, let's play Detalff. And make this have some Blood Moon, which will apply even more bleed and even more damage. And there's their Unseen Elder. They waited a little bit to get him down there. So this is a key question. Do they have the devotion? Because we saw them apply the bleed, but I'm not sure we saw the damage proc at the end of their turn, so perhaps not. So now I think what we do is we go Queen of the Night, because if we go with her in the range row, we can then purify their Cave Troll, who no longer has bleed, and so we're not losing anything there. Now it doesn't have the defender status. That means we have plenty of time to use Detalff to attack the operator. Okay, then they'll go on Dying Thirst. That is going to be pretty big for their Fletters. That is going to be the big difference, at the moment at least. They have two, but we only have one. Except that we can also play Orianna here. And with her, apply a whole bunch of bleed. And now damage that Unseen Elder. Okay, their Oneiromancy into, well, the same thing. As we were saying, it is a Vampire's deck as well, but Oneiromancy confirms they do not have Devotion. So, as we were saying, that is a pretty important factor for Unseen Elder. He is not nearly as strong without Devotion. The other thing that we, well, opted not to play early on, which we certainly could have justified doing, would have been Nekurat. Let's play it here, because that'll give us another great source of bleed. And in this case, I mean, try and take down Orianna, but I'm not sure we're going to be fast enough to do that. And this bleed should take out Unseen Elder, because we do have the Devotion from our Unseen Elder, so the damage procs at the end of our turn as well. And then they play their Nekurat, so yeah, they waited a little bit to play it as well. And here's the thing with this event. Because every unit that we play is getting resilience, you can very easily justify having round one last a very long time. So we may continue to push here, even though we're looking pretty good at the moment. In which case, you know, playing a Thrive unit at the end of the round is not great, but we'd rather play this and then finish with the Garkain. We're definitely going to save Regis, though. And that means we should be able to do that as well. And that. Okay, they've Wispus into what? That's Purification. We did make a point of having our Defender over there to protect the Unseen Elder. So it no longer has Resilience, it no longer has the Defender status. But as long as they don't have any additional sources of Purification, we should still be relatively okay. So now we'll go with the Garkain. It is, of course, later than you would usually like to play this, but remember, of course, it will get Resilience, so even though it's late in this round for the Garkain, assuming that it keeps that Resilience into round 2, we'll still have time to build it up in round 2. Let's play it here, and proc that Thrive, and give ourselves another round of Nekurat, so we could get rid of theirs. A little bit overkill, but it might be worth doing. Oh, and I totally forgot about Detalff because, well, we didn't have a bleeding enemy until we used Nekurat, although then again, got destroyed by Unseen Elder damage. They reset using Spores. Ooh, that's a tricky one. So here's the thing, they took the lead with that play, and we very much do not want to play Regis right now, because if we do, he's not going to gain additional power. So I think we do need to pass right now. However, we will take a little more damage from the bleed, but we do still have Unseen Elder doing his thing, so that will help. But I still don't think it's going to be enough, per se. But we are still looking at having all of our key cards with Resilience here, so our round 2 is looking pretty solid. Alright, so of course we still have Regis. We deliberately did not play him in round 1 because he's still going to get more powerful over time. Finally, we get our own Fletter, so that's great, as well as Protofleder, which if we load up on a bunch of bleed on one unit, then that could be very effective. And then Naglfar, our tutor. I mean, we've gotten most of our biggest cards here. But surely there's something we might want from that. But let's save this, because this is pretty sweet at the moment. So here you see, we have 32 to their 12. So that is why our setup going into round 2 was actually better than their setup. So even if we did lose round 1, we're still looking pretty good here. Now they do have the Cave Troll back here with their Unseen Elder after using Witch's Sabbath. We got our Defender as well, but didn't go in the row we would have liked. We also got a Fleder though, that is quite convenient. So I think let's play our Fleder, apply bleed, and then apply damage. Okay, so Neuromancy into their other Fleder. Here's the thing, with a short round, and with us starting with such a big head start, it's going to be difficult for them to keep pace with us here. And if we're looking at what we're going to get from Naglfar, we have Gael, which could be a good finisher against a card with a lot of bleeding on it. And we have Yaga. Yaga, we're going to need to have some time to charge that up. I'm thinking we'd probably opt for Gael. Doesn't work so well when they have the Cave Troll, though. So I think that probably means we're loading up on the bleed right now against that Cave Troll. Maybe we'll just go 2 charges and then use Protofleder. And, of course, Detalff as well for a little bit of damage. Oh, and don't forget you. I suppose that could have given us an even bigger boost on the Protofleder. I forgot about you. Okay, now they'll pass. So that definitely means we will win in round 2 here. But let's take a look at the cards that have resilience, because right now they only have 1, whereas we have 2. So once again, things are looking better for us long-term than they are for our opponent. So that is important. Okay, so we have a couple of Feasts of Blood, which gives us a little bit of damage, a little bit of bleeding. The Purification, probably not going to be as relevant this time around because the Resilience doesn't matter in round 3. Let's get rid of the Foglet. And then the Bruxa, I mean, we do still have a Fleder in our deck though. I'd love to get that. And there it is. So I think we're probably looking to play our other Fleder here. And then use our last leader ability charge, and making sure that we give a boost to both of these Fleders. Okay, so they have a whole lot of bleed there. And that's the tricky thing, is after doing that, their Fleder gets a big boost, so it's no longer going to be an easy killing range for Gael. So even if we do apply 3 damage to it, it may not make the biggest difference, but this is probably still the play here. Yes, it's going to purify off that initial bleed, but it's going to deal 3 damage and apply 3 more bleed, which is, of course, important to keep these Fleders growing. And they're going to do the same. The difference, though, of course, being that we have 2 Fleders, whereas they only have 1. So I think it has to be Feast of Blood here once again. Okay, then it's Old Spear Tip, interestingly. Didn't really see that one coming. So we could either get Gael out with Naglfar. Wouldn't be enough damage to take out the Fleder yet, but if we wait until our next turn, when this gets damaged by the bleed, if they don't have any additional sources of bleed to boost this up, then Gael may actually get the death blow. So tell you what, a slightly early Regis might actually be the play here, and then use it on Old Spear Tip, because that will force out the not asleep version without actually proccing their ability. And what that means is that now we can go Naglfar with Gael. I think we should have just enough here to get the death blow, to get a little bit of an extra boost on Gael. That means they have, I would imagine, probably Regis as their finisher. It's 17 points plus the damage and the drain is not enough though, so we'll take the win. Alright, so going up against Northern Realms here, and we'll go first. Okay, so we have two big cards here. We have both Regis, who we're going to want to power up over time by applying tons of bleed, and we also have Yaga, which we want to use to consume some of our opponent's units. We're going to want to play that as early as possible, where we'd also ideally have our defender to protect Yaga, because at least initially when she has 1 power, she's very vulnerable. Foglet could be an easy target for her to consume, but what if we get rid of one of our Garkains? I do love the Fleder. Maybe we get rid of the Bruxa and Witch Apprentice. Okay. So, not quite as much support for Yaga as we might like to have, but maybe what we do here is we play her first, and then we use our stratagem on her, so that she has Veil, she can't get locked, and at 5 power, she's much harder to get rid of. Okay, they have Trident Infantry, well, as it turns out, that is a card that we can immediately consume, and so we will definitely do that right now, because that costs 4 provisions, so that's great. Now Yaga is bigger and harder to take out, and it means next time she'll be looking to consume a 5 provision cost card. So now let's set up the Nekurat in preparation for some bleed. Okay, Dimeridium Shackles, so good thing we did put the Veil on Yaga, because, well, otherwise she would have just gotten locked. And fortunately, we do have another Nekurat, so we can break that one out. But we really want them to start playing more units, because we need to apply bleed in order to power up Regis. They're going to pass very quickly here. We will draw back up to 10 cards, however, and we have 3 cards on the board with Resilience, whereas they have 0. So sure, we'll take the round 1 win in that case, and we will very likely look to push in round 2. Okay, so now that we've already consumed a 4 provision cost card, that means the Foglet is very much not needed. So we're going all-out vampires here, and since we're going to be playing first in round 2, that might mean playing Bruxa could make some sense, setting ourselves up for some Thrive, although we do still have the Fleders and Garkain for other engines, so that might not be necessary. And Unseen Elder is, of course, amazing. So let's start with the Fleder here. And the interesting thing is that we could even use Yaga's ability here to consume this Nekurat, because it does have 5 provisions, and it's locked, and it's at 1 power, so it's not really doing us much good at this stage. It does mean that we won't be able to consume one of our opponent's 5 provision cost cards, but of course, this is when Yaga is most vulnerable, when she's at just 1 power, so I think it might be worth doing that, in case, for example, they try to do the Trident Infantry plus 1 boost that they did on their first turn in round 1. But no, it's Selective Mutation. And fortunately, that means that we finally have targets to apply bleed to. So let's get down another Fleder, and I'm gonna row stack here a little bit in the melee row. It's a little risky if our opponent does have something like a Spring Equinox to purify our entire melee row. However, I'm trying to get up to 25 power in this melee row as quickly as possible to trigger Sabbath for the Witch Apprentice. Okay, then Temerian Drummer next. That is a 5 provision cost card, which means, unfortunately, we cannot consume that with Yaga. There is a 6 provision cost card on the board. In fact, there are 2 of them, but there are Fleders, and we definitely don't want to consume those. Those are going to be some of our biggest cards in this round. So instead, let's go with the Alp here, and apply some bleeds. Boost up those Fleders, and in doing so, we are now above 25 power in this melee row. So that means that on our next turn, we could play the Witch Apprentice, and that would become a 2-point per turn engine. Okay, there's Nathaniel Pastodi. That'll be the card that they focus on boosting, and oddly enough, it is a bleed-centric card. So it'll be the bleed from Nathaniel Pastodi versus the bleed from all of these vampires. And he is a 7 provision cost card, which means if we could just get a 6 provision cost card to consume somewhere, we could steal Nathaniel Pastodi from them, and he's going to become very highly boosted, which means Yaga would get a ton of boost from that. So tell you what if we use Queen of the Night here for some additional bleeding? Then we'll give some more bleeding, and, well, some more bleeding, and then we'll consume Queen of the Night, because once she has already used that deploy ability, we don't need her that much anymore. Yes, she was going to be a unit with resilience, but it now opens up the opportunity to consume Nathaniel Pastodi in a couple of turns, and that's going to be huge. So now we have a ton of great options here. We could either play Witch Apprentice to get some boost from that, or we could go Unseen Elder for even more bleed. I think I'm actually going to hold off a little bit on the bleed, because we want to keep Nathaniel Pastodi relatively highly boosted when we consume him. So let's go Witch Apprentice here. And this actually doesn't need to be in the melee row, so let's try not to row stack any more than we have to. Oh, Visigoda. Okay, you're gonna boost Pastodi even more with that Visigoda? And they do. In which case, if they continue to do that, we could even wait just to make this Yaga consumption even bigger. Although, if we consume Pastodi, then we could subsequently consume Visigoda as well, which is pretty tempting. So what if we just apply bleeding, play the Garkain, and yeah, I suppose we'll consume Pastodi. And that is a huge play there, and then in a couple of turns, we will consume Visigoda as well. Okay, there's Keldar. That is probably the card that they got with their selective mutation. He's going to be relatively big. He's conveniently a 9. Not sure we're going to quite have enough time to consume him as well, but he could be what comes next after Visigoda. So let's apply some more bleed. And I suppose it might be time to finally break out the Unseen Elder. Obviously, the earlier you play him, the better, because that means more time for the bleed to occur. But it just hasn't really been necessary thus far. And we want to consume Visigoda. We may want to consume Keldar, but Keldar might not end up happening, so I guess we'll put the bleeding on him. Well, everybody will have some bleeding, as it turns out. Okay, target practice does work well with Keldar. That'll give them a couple of Witcher students here. Alright, so now this is where we consume Visigoda. And what we can also do is use Feast of Blood to shut down this Temerian Drummer. Then I think we'll have just enough time to consume Keldar on our last turn in this round. Okay, then it's Eskel, so presumably, yeah, the other two members of the Wolf School Witcher trio. So now we're probably just looking to go super overkill on our leader ability here to set up Protofleder. And although the best target for actually dealing the damage to would be Keldar, because he actually has 8 power, we're going to consume him with Yaga, so we don't really want to do that so much, so we're probably just going to go super overkill on one of these guys. Take your pick. Which of the Wolf School trio don't you like very much? Lambert, I guess? So then we use Protofleder on Lambert. As I said, it's going to be super overkill on the bleed, but in doing so means we get a ton of boosts on the Protofleder. And then it's Berengar. And now, yes, ideally we would have had a little more time to charge up Regis, but since we're going for the 2-0 win here, we're going to play him. So we'll do this, and I suppose might as well go for Berengar. But also, we will consume Keldar. So we have eaten all of our opponent's biggest cards. And even if this last card is, I don't know, an Eretein, that probably still wouldn't be enough, and that is exactly what it is. But no, even with the huge reset, we will still take the win. Alright, so going up against vampires here. And we'll go first. Or at least, it's blood scent, so it's probably vampires. However, notably, we do not have either of our biggest vampires, Unseen Elder or Regis. So let's try swapping out maybe our Bruxa. And the Cave Troll could help us if we were to get Unseen Elder. Now, we could potentially get him with Naglfar, but of course, we don't know if that's going to be the case. So maybe we swap out a Feast of Blood and the Witch Apprentice. Okay, unfortunately, we didn't get him, but I think we set up as if we're going to get one of those guys with Naglfar by going Cave Troll first. Okay, it's a Nekurat for them. So yes, as we expected, does look like vampires. So now, if we wanted to take the slow and steady approach, we could use a Nekurat of our own. But if we're feeling bold and we want to take a bit of a chance and see what we end up getting with Naglfar, we gotta go with that. So let's try it out. And we do get Unseen Elder. So that is great. And let's consider putting the Crystal Skull on that Unseen Elder. Okay, then it's a Garkain. So that'll be an engine for them. Now at this stage, let's play our Nekurat. And apply bleeding to you. Then we'll look to get out some of our engines, like the Fleder, and like the Garkain. It's the Catachan. It's an interesting one in this event, because it actually doesn't do bleed. And although it has resilience, the Ekimars that it spawns in will not have resilience. So we could start playing our engines like the Fleder and the Garkain, or we could get Detalff down here. That is, of course, another strong option. And I might be leaning that way, to tell you the truth. So let's play him. And we'll give Blood Moon on this row, since we know we're going to have a lot of targets between the Catachan and all the Ekimars that will spawn in. Now that we have the bleed back on the Nekurat, we can, well, start applying some bleed there. Okay, then they'll use Crimson Curse on us, okay? Fortunately, though, that Veil pays off for the Unseen Elder. So now let's use the Fleder. And since that's a vampire, that gets our Nekurat off cooldown. Let's use him to apply some bleed. I mean, technically the Garkain is the most dangerous, although there are some synergies to be had if we are using bleed on the enemies in the Blood Moon row. Maybe we try to get rid of that Garkain, though. Okay, so down goes the Catachan. And they have a Plumbered. Not the strongest of vampires. But if they can get a second one down here, then that second one will have a stronger bleed effect. So now let's use the Garkain. That'll get our Nekurat off cooldown. So once again, let's target the Garkain on their side. Okay, then they'll go, as expected, a second Plumber. And now our Nekurat is very close to going down to this bleed, so let's play one more Vampire here to get a little more bleed out of him by going Queen of the Night in the melee row. And applying that bleed, we might want to try to get rid of this Plumbered here. Then let's just make sure that we get rid of that Garkain. So they are now engineless, and we have a pretty huge lead here, so we would like to pass. So that's not bad that they pass there. Because even if they do, we will take the round 1 win, and we have way more units with resilience than they do. Okay, and so we draw into Gael, which works well with all of our bleed. And the Witch Apprentice, if we have Sabbath, or if we're close to Sabbath, then that could work well. We aren't quite there yet, but as you see, they have one card with 1 power and bleeding remaining, and it's not even an engine, whereas we still have Unseen Elder and Detalff, as well as the Fleder and the Garkain. But this still may not quite have enough time to do its thing, and then Yaga, they do have a 4 provision cost card at the moment, but I'm not sure we're going to have enough time to actually consume it. Swap you out, and then we'll see if we can make Yaga work here, but I'm a little skeptical. But I think we are definitely pushing in round 2 here, because although they do have 1 more card than us, we have a 25-point advantage right now, because of all that additional resilience that we had. And as I was saying, those units are also engines, so they're going to get a lot bigger. So we could go for Gael on this Plumbered here. I guess it's not the worst idea. Maybe we do that. That way we guarantee that he gets boosted. But it does mean that we didn't apply any bleed on that turn. Okay, there's their Unseen Elder. And they do have Devotion, as we just saw. The bleed procced at the end of their turn. So in that case, let's use Feast of Blood, deal some damage, give some bleed, and purify their Unseen Elder, so that worst comes to worst, even if they do win in round 2, they will not have Unseen Elder carrying over into round 3. Okay, then it's a Fleder. But down goes their Unseen Elder, so that's huge. So I think what we do is now we play Yaga. And we aren't quite at Sabbath here, so we won't get the Zeal. But now let's go with a Blood Scent charge on the Fleder. And damage you as well. Because what we could do is we could use Yaga to consume our Garkain. Worst comes worst. Obviously, it's an engine, so we'd rather not do that. But if they don't have a 4 provision cost unit for us to eat on their side, then that is a possibility. And the Alp is a 5, so if we do eat our Garkain, and that does mean on a subsequent turn, we could eat their Alp, so I do like that idea. Let's play another Garkain here, and I suppose that can help make up for the one that we're going to lose. So let's damage you. And yes, eat you. It's a little self-destructive, as I was saying, but since we have this other Garkain down here, I'm not that worried about it. And we could just find another Blood Scent charge here, but since we're planning on eating this Alp, not so keen on giving it bleed, especially because Unseen Elder will give it bleed. Okay, then there's Gael. Ooh, that's well done. That is well done. Okay, so now I think what we're doing is we're going to go and apply a bunch of Blood Scent charges to one of these cards, ideally either the Fleder or Gael, and then use Protofleder on it to get a huge boost. So let's do that now. Now, our biggest issue here is that we do not have Regis as a big finisher, so we'll have to see if they have him. They do have Orianna, which is a very strong card. It's a little bit of a short round, so she may not have that much time to power up. And now what we do is we can eat that Alp. That gets rid of one of their resilience cards, and it means that our Yaga will next time round consume a 6, and that means Fleder might be next on the menu. Let's play the Foglet here. That is actually the ideal target for Yaga to consume if you do need to eat one of your own units. That was our last card. We have about a 30-point lead here, but they still have 2 cards remaining. So it's Detalff. He does not have much time to do his thing either. And we still have the Unseen Elder, which will continue to apply bleed, which will continue to boost up some of our engines as well. So even if they have Regis here, I'm not sure it would be enough. There he is. And they came ever so close, but we still pull off the win. So there's a look at a Monsters Vampires deck for the new Entrenched seasonal event. If you liked the video, then make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and leave a comment down below to let me know which other cards, archetypes, and factions you'd like us to experiment with next. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you next time.